What's up, brother?
Not much, man. Got the ski season rolling. Got snow flying. We've already been out for a day or two, and just ready for more terrain to open up here.
It's nice, man. Welcome back to the pod. This is part two, with a couple more to come, I'm sure, as the adventures ensue.
Glad to be back.
Um, so, during the last episode with you, we discussed your journey on the PCT. We mentioned that you've traveled so much and have so much insight and stories that we could never cover it in only an hour or two. And from my experience, the first time we tried recording, we got a little tipsy slurry, and hour three is not good for us. So, yeah, part two.
It was fun catching up with you. We hadn't seen each other in a while, so it was needed.
Yeah, it gave you a little practice at doing this. I am still a
Yeah,
rookie.
you're getting better every day.
Hey, even after the hiatus, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So, what you drinking today?
I picked up a bottle of Johnny Walker Black Label.
Nice, nice. Since I have you on, and I know it's not Keystone, but Breckenridge Brewery, they're already celebrating Christmas, and I'm not a big fan of pumpkin ales, so skip that season. And with a little glass of green tea on ice on the side.
Well, cheers.
All right, but I digress. Today we're talking about your journey into 2017. Um, and then you carried on with the remainder of the PCT. So, what was your initial plan?
Well, from the year before in 2016, I had met this girl on trail that we kind of connected with, had a good thing kind of going, and just kind of had to split on the PCT due to different needs, but we kept in contact. So throughout the winter of 2016-17 season, we were kind of chatting, hanging out and stuff. And she was hanging out in Georgia. And so I'd flown out a couple times to go see her and whatnot. And finally we had made a plan. We were going to, fly. I was going to fly out to Georgia and road trip back with her. And we were going to make our way, God, I want to say to like Washington or something. We had some grand plan. So I was hanging out there and things just kind of weren't clicking between me and her like they were on the trail. And she ended up, we were stopped at Nashville to see my parents on the way back because I was so close, you got to see the folks.
Yeah.
And she ended up just kind of ditching me in Nashville at my parents' house. Was, when that happened, had kind of made a little bit of a plan, like a backup plan, because I also felt it wasn't going great. And I just
And she probably asked you to pump gas, and then boom, she's gone. No, I'm kidding.
no, it was like she kind of like packed her stuff, so like I knew it was coming. And she had this conversation with me. I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go to Puerto Rico. And she's like, what? And I
Yeah.
said, I already looked at flights. Like I kind of knew this was coming. Um, and so like a few days later, I ended up flying to Puerto Rico on a whim. It was just again, it was one of those I used Skyscanner and find the from here to anywhere, and it finds you the cheapest flights. And that was where I found a cheap flight that is somewhere that was cool that I've never been. And so I was like, I'm gonna go island hop through the Caribbean, hang out on the beach, go snorkeling. And it ended up turning into so much more. That was my first real kind of like one way flight. Out of the country. Well, out of the country.
off
Uh,
off the mainland.
I ended up going to the British Virgin Islands, so I worked my way there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I ended up flying down and getting in this amazing hostel, and it wasn't like the nicest place, but the location. It was on San Cristobal like square, right in old San Juan. So right where like the cruise ships come in and all the tourists are wanting to go, and it's like really expensive to stay there. Except this hostel was like $15 a night.
Nice.
It was so much fun. I ended up going out drinking to this place called the Dollar Bar and met this guy Giannis, who was the whitest Greek, like pale white Greek that's like 6'5", so it doesn't look Greek. And we ended up hanging out, and we met this other guy Matthias, who's from Chile. And I stayed in Old San Juan and did, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks of Spanish immersion class, trying to learn another language because you get a whole different experience when you know the language.
Yeah.
And during that, me and Giannis and Matiz are all hanging out. And we ended up, I told him, I was like, hey, man, I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to go road trip around Puerto Rico. Like, for those who don't know, you can drive across Puerto Rico the entirety of it in like 3 or 4 hours. So it's
Right.
not a real big island.
No, but I mean,
Um,
compared to St. Thomas, I want to say it's 4 times bigger. I don't remember the exact anymore, but
that
it's
sounds
it's
about right. I mean, I
yeah,
hitchhiked across St. Thomas in like 30, 45 minutes.
exactly. You could walk St. Thomas in like 4 hours.
I think it was St. John. I hiked halfway across
Yeah, yeah,
later
it's
later in
crazy.
that summer.
Yeah, we'll revisit that one. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was really a great experience because that was my first real like hostel meeting traveling friends. And it takes a lot to go, hey man, I just met you like this week, but do you and you who also just met everybody this week like want to get in a car together and we'll go drive around for like 4 or 5 days? And they were down, I was down. We split costs, we did all that, and we packed three grown men and three like backpacks into like a Honda like Fit or whatever kind of like car you have.
Like
Very
an
similar to
economy
that.
car.
Yeah, like tight. There's this person in the back seat sitting next to a bag, and there's three of us, and there's this 6 foot Greek guy, and we just take off, and we headed east out of San Juan, up into El Yunque, and do some hikes up there, go to some waterfalls, do some cliff jumping and stuff, and learned about everybody's heard about the chupacabra. And that's the origin of that story is from El Yunque, and that's why they all sleep with their windows closed and all
Huh.
this stuff.
I thought that
And
was Mexico. No, though, huh?
chupacabras started in Puerto Rico
Huh.
and may have expanded out there. It's got a lot of folklore to it.
Right,
Someone's probably
right.
going to fact check me and tell me I'm wrong, but you know what? I listened to the
Who
locals.
cares? Yeah,
I was having fun. We were on beaches and drinking and hanging out and um,
it made it more
kind of
fun running from the chupacabra.
it was a good joke when some of the Airbnbs we were staying at, like where
Yeah,
like there was no air conditioning, so the doors were just open, and kind of comment on something, and you know,
yeah.
it was fun. Um, but man, we ended up down near Ponce, and there's a little town west of there, and I should remember it because I went back like 2 years ago, and we're going through, and Matias, Chilean. It was football season. He had to watch his soccer, whatever you want to call it. Was in a bar hanging out, watching the game. So we're doing that, and I kind of got bored. So I went and walked around town. Beautiful little awesome town with this like town square. They had a band going. And I walked past this sign. And I kind of look at it, and I'm like, bioluminescent bay. And I just kind of looked at it as like I knew that they had one up in Culebra, on another island, and I'd never heard of one down here. And so me and my buddies all are like, I kind of started talking to him like, yeah, we should do it. So for those who don't know what a bioluminescent bay is, there's this algae that when you look at the water, it's perfectly dark. And so we take this boat out, and it's a little bit of a moon, but the water's just looks like dark water. And then as you jump in, the algae as it gets disturbed lights up this like bluish green. And so we actually got to swim in this like bioluminescent bay. And so as you're just swimming around, you can see all this little bit of light like lighting up. Not like the pictures you probably have seen make it look like those are a little edited, but you can still like
Right.
it's very, very noticeable. And it was such a cool experience because all the other ones up in Culebra you're not supposed to swim in, but this one you're allowed to.
Really? Why
Yeah,
is that? Do you know?
it's to protect the algae. Because most
Okay.
people
Okay.
like they don't want motorboats in there because every vehicle and leaks a little bit of oil or gas, or
Right. Right.
people put sunscreen on and that type of stuff. Kind of affects it. So we got to go swimming in this bioluminescent bay and ended up at Cabo Rojo, which is the southern west point of Puerto Rico, and there's this lighthouse up there, and there's massive cliffs kind of coming down, and it's like the Caribbean Sea starts south of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and all those things. So the north side is the Gulf, which is kind of
Right.
rocky and not as clear water, and it's just such a difference when you get to that south side. You've got the crystal clear water, you've got that
Hmm.
white sand beach, exactly what you kind of think of when you think Caribbean. So
Right.
it's interesting seeing the difference in that kind of aspect. But man, that was a crazy couple days. I mean, we ended up renting an Airbnb one night, and it was on a college campus. It was like a dorm, like for a college campus, and we're like kind of like weirded out going to this place. Like, I have to go through a guard house and talk to this guard and tell him what we're doing, and we end up checking in, and so then we go get some food. Right, we're hungry. Um, and we just start talking to these locals who end up inviting us to this party. And we're like racing to catch them, and they're blowing red lights. Obviously, they're college kids, and we were all extremely sober and safe, 100%. Um,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, and it was just a crazy night where we stumble back in at like 4 o'clock in the morning, get up at like 8, 9 o'clock to hit the road again and try and make it to this cave. And I guarantee you, everybody who's listened to this knows what cave I'm talking about. They don't know it, but it's in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's in Batman. It's in a couple other ones, and it's like you go into the
Really?
cave and as you look back out, there's stalagmites and stalactites like sticking up that look like jaws.
Oh, nice.
So it's in a bunch of really famous movies.
I think I may
Um,
have seen the picture of that or video of that before.
you probably have.
Yeah.
Like I said, everybody has seen it, but you know how movies do. It's a weird angle, and it's this, and the lighting's just right, and all that
Right.
stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean, I got really close with Matias and Giannis, and I've kept in contact with those guys over the years. And it was really cool when we got back to Old San Juan because they have this festival, and it's called De Noche de San Juan, and it's the night of Saint Christopher or something.
Hmm.
And we just found out about it that night. And you go to the beach, and they have floodlights up, and at midnight, everybody walks into the ocean backwards, and they dunk themselves 3 times. And
What's
it's
the where's the origin of that tradition come from?
so it's kind of like based around almost like baptism. It's to
Oh,
give
okay.
you good luck and wash your sins away from the past year and give you good luck for the next year. And it was just a really interesting thing just to stumble upon, and nothing you'd ever fly to Puerto Rico to go do unless that was your religious thing.
Right.
Um, but watching, there's food trucks and there's kids running around at midnight on the beach, and like I said, floodlights and stuff. Um, so that was a really cool experience. Paired with the song Despacito.
Yes. Yes, I do.
So it came out in 2017. That was the year that it came out.
Okay.
And so that's where I'd never heard it before. And I was in this bar, the Dollar Bar, and everybody just starts like erupting into it. And, obviously I'm just sitting there like, this is a good song. Okay. Like, I don't understand what they're saying.
Right.
Um, but like, that was my first, experience with Despacito because the artist is from San Juan
Okay.
and he's from Puerto Rico. And then there's a bunch of the music video that's filmed in a bar in Old San Juan called La Factoria. And we would hang out there, and they would have salsa nights Tuesday and all this stuff. You weren't allowed to play Despacito because it was requested so much, but it was one of those interesting bars where you'd come in, and the first you're in this bar and you're hanging out and you hear like American music. And you're like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden you see somebody walk around the bar and open this door, this sliding door, and walk through it. And you're kind of watching it like, and then you see another person do it and another person do it. So you're like, eventually you get curious and you go, well, what's back there? And you walk through this door and it goes into like a quiet sitting area with another open door that goes into the salsa bar.
Ah.
And I hung out at that bar for probably off and on for a week before I realized you had to go around the bar again and then take a right, and you went into like the EDM, like cave bar.
Ah.
And so it was just like, I hung out there for like a week, man, and didn't even know it existed. It was a really, really cool area.
Dude,
Um,
the percussion on you probably noticed it. The percussion instruments on like Latino EDM has a lot more like conga drums and like it's
Hmm.
just it's got its own flavor. It's really good.
Yeah, and it was a really good acoustics in there. And again, I was very sober, very observant of everything going on around me. But like the acoustics were in there, so I don't know if it was kind of like that Pueblo style or what, but it was like cold and humid in there. It was great because there's no they don't really use air conditioning;
Right.
it's all open air, so it
No.
was a nice little reprieve. And the funny thing is my cousin, um, I have this weird knack of meeting him in random places,
Your cousin?
and my cousin, and it's my cousin Nate. And this was our first. Well, we had met in Colorado at one point, but like he just
Dude, what are
calls me.
the
Goes,
what are the odds?
he calls me and goes, "Hey, I'm coming to Puerto Rico." Like his business that he works for has a big factory down there, and so he was
Huh,
coming down there for business.
that's
And
cool.
I got to like meet up with him and take him to La Factoria and show him around. It was only one night, but we made the best of it. We had a great
Yeah, that's
time,
cool.
and we met this bartender. It was my first time with a mixologist, a true and through mixologist, and we had so much fun with him because you've worked at a bar. Everybody's, oh, I'll take a whiskey soda or whiskey ginger, a
Yeah.
vodka tonic, and we would just look at this guy and go, okay, we want something sweet, but not too sweet, but with tequila, and or
Yeah.
we'd be like, mix something with gin, and we would just let him go, and
Yep.
he had so much fun with us. The next time I came into the bar, he like kicked people out of the seats I was sitting in, and was like, "No, sit right here." And like, I just do the same thing, and it was so much fun.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, that one
Yeah.
got me into trouble though.
What happened?
Oh man, I went out drinking with a different girl, and we did salsa dance and all this. And we've had the late nights and the early wake ups, man. And I had to get to the airport, and I was flying over to St. Thomas, and I fell asleep on the plane. It's like a 30-minute flight,
Yeah, bro. You don't even hit high altitude. You just
and
basically
I
jump the
wake up
plane
to the
over.
stewardess or the last guy getting off the plane going, if you don't get up, they're gonna take you back. And I'm like, oh, I gotta get up, and
You
she
should
goes,
have fucked with him and been like, for free?
oh man, it was such a fun. Like Puerto Rico is definitely a great place for people to feel like you're out of the country without needing a passport.
Right. No,
Um,
no. I want to go there soon.
it's so much amazing culture, and definitely holds a special place in my heart. I spent 2 weeks there a few years back for a wedding of my friends. Getting to go, we're going to go here and go. We're going to go to this bioluminescent bay, and doing all that stuff. So it's really cool.
So
Um,
the bioluminescent bay, is that year round?
yeah,
Because it's so close, it's closer to the equator, so the environment doesn't change much, I guess. That makes
yeah,
sense.
and I mean, I've only ever been there in the summer, so maybe I'm wrong, but like the two times I've been there, it was pretty spot on, exactly like the same.
Right.
And got to also swim in one in Asia a few years after this one. So, and
That's
it was
cool.
pretty similar. It's really cool if you can get one near a beach because you can watch the waves roll in, and then the waves start to glow a little bit.
Just recently, like, I guess it's very seasonal there. That's why I asked. By there, I mean like Tampa, Siesta area in
Hmm.
Florida. But I've seen some really good like videos and pictures of it rolling in. It's sick.
Yeah, it is definitely. If you ever get a chance, you're close to one. And the cool thing about the one I went to in Puerto Rico was it was like $10 per person.
Oh, they charge you?
Yeah. Well, they
Oh,
take you. Well, you get on a
on a
boat,
boat.
and then the boat takes you out to it, and then brings you back.
Got you. What kind of boat was
And
it?
I
Like just a
mean,
little, like a
like a
little.
pontoon boat, but
Okay, okay.
something like that, where it was just a little bit bigger of a pontoon boat.
I got you. I'm trying
And
to picture it, but I know what
yeah,
you're saying now.
and when we went back, a few years ago, or probably a year or two ago, it was like $40 or $30 or
Whoa.
something. And I was like, and I was complaining. I'm like, man, I paid like 10, $15 for this, you know.
Blame the
Um,
internet. Blame the internet. Everybody knows.
but I still looked at my friends and was like, it's worth it, guys. Like, I'll
Yeah,
go,
for
I would
sure.
pay this again. And this will be my third time swimming in a bioluminescent. So definitely one of those really amazing experiences to get to do.
Hey,
Um,
we might edit this one out, but did you try farting in the water and disturbing the algae?
No, I didn't try that one.
Ah, damn it.
Maybe when we get to Asia, I'll tell you what I did do in Bangladesh Bay.
I can't wait to hear this. Well, maybe I don't want to. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Let's go on.
So yeah, I mean, I flew over to St. Thomas. Um, what's the main town where the airport is in St. Thomas?
Charlotte Amelie.
Charlotte Amalie.
Yeah. And then
You
you
know,
fly in right there. I think that's Emerald Beach, or they might have changed the name of it to somebody's name. But yeah, basically you fly in and tell me that isn't crazy, that landing strip. You look like you're gonna like hit the ocean when you're landing. They have to do it so precise. And then
yeah,
yeah, you go right up over the one little crest of a ridge of a mountain, and it's Charlotte Amelie.
yeah. So I flew into there, and this is where I figured out hitchhiking is different in the islands. Your normal hitchhikers, right? You see the thumb out and they're going like this, right? That's
Right.
that's not how you hitchhike in the islands. Do you know how? I mean, you lived it on that down there.
I didn't hitchhike. We walked everywhere or took the safari.
You point. You
Really?
point the way you're going. That's it. And that's how you hitchhike. And so I ended up like hitchhiking with some two ladies in a car. Just picked me up. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to get to somewhere you're very familiar with, Red Hook.
Yeah. Red Hook's wild.
So at this point, like I'm bumming it. I am straight shoestringing it, and I'm like hanging out in a bar, and I'm talking to locals. I'm like, hey man, is there like somewhere I could just like camp on the beach and or whatever, and just like kind of get off in the middle of nowhere. And I'd like hiked into some woods and found some like homeless camps and stuff, and I
Oh
talked to this
shit.
guy, and he's like, only if you want to get stabbed. I was like,
Damn.
oh, that's not how I want my night to go. So I ended up meeting up with some retired cop from New York, and he's in his like 60s, 70s, and so we're chatting with him. He's offered for me to stay at his house, and I was like, nah, I got to make my way to St. John, to get to Cinnamon Bay for a reservation I made at a campground, only one I could find. You
Right.
know, everything else is so expensive, and this
Yeah.
was like July 2nd, I want to say.
Oh, that made it worse too for the price.
Yeah, so I ended up just hopping a boat to St. John that night, getting over there with this retired cop who ends up like fall down drunk. And I'm like,
That's why he went to the islands.
yeah, I mean, he was having a good time. He was a good guy.
Yeah.
Um, I get him back on the boat to go home, find his way home, and I'm like sitting there looking at hotels, and they're like $300-400 because we're like right
Yeah.
next to Fourth of July. All this, I'm like, dude, I can't afford this. So I'm like, I'm gonna go try and hide on the beach. I'm walking down the beach, and there's just parties going. Because like I think July 3rd is their Day of Independence, and ours is July 4th. So they're celebrating, and so there's people everywhere. So I'm like walking down, and the only place I see people they're not is a cemetery. And so about midnight, 1 o'clock, I go curl up next to an above ground grave and just kind of pull a blanket over me and just kind of fall asleep, in the cemetery. Wake up to people coming through and partying and
Oh
whatnot.
no. Oh, okay.
Oh
I was gonna say it would suck if you were out there and someone's like coming to grieve their loved one and you're just like passed out on his grave.
man, it was a little weirder than that. Like I woke up to somebody having sex in the cemetery. It
Life
was,
and death all
and
life
I
and
just
death
kind of
all in
was
one.
just like, don't move, don't make noise, like don't do anything. They don't like, and they never noticed I was there. And since they have a parade, a 24-hour parade, July 3rd, that starts at midnight. And so it's all the people partying all night before. They're all like hammered and fall around drunk. And then it slowly turns into this like family event. So I got up, 8, 9 o'clock, pretty early to try and get moving. So it wasn't like awkward to me getting out of the cemetery,
Right.
and just went and found somewhere on the parade route and put up a hammock, hung my bag or put my bag on top of me and just took a nap in my hammock, like watching this parade go by. Oh man, it was such a fun time, until I ended up hitchhiking out to Cinnamon Bay, which is where I was going to camp for the next couple days. Just kind of hang out, bum around, do my thing. snorkel and whatnot.
Yeah, St. John's or St. John rather, it's actually like 75% national park, right? So there's a lot like of open land there. It's very different than St. Thomas
And
itself.
it's very steep terrain.
Uh-huh. I didn't
So,
get to go there, but yeah, I've done the research on it.
well, and they don't really have like a public transit system. You probably rode
Mhm.
some of the trucks that they have, and you can pay, but they only take you if it's worth it to them. So like one of the nights I was trying to get back from St. John, like the next night, because I came over there for the fireworks for 4th of July. Um, Me and this girl are sitting in this Jeep, like hoping that like we're both going to the same spot, trying to get there. They did end up taking us, but I mean, I mostly hitchhiked around that island. Um, it was easier, like it was cheaper. It was like a $25 per person ride, or I could stand there and
Really?
go pointing this way, and I usually would get a ride in 30, 40 minutes.
That's crazy because the safaris, basically it's a trolley on St. Thomas, were like $2 or $5. They're like
Yeah.
jacking up the price out there on St. John, huh?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot less, you
Yeah, it makes
know.
sense. It makes sense. A lot less people, a lot
Um,
less infrastructure.
so the really cool thing about Cinnamon Bay, other than the snorkeling and all that stuff, is first time I'm walking to my campsite, I got my backpack on, and I see all these like holes in the ground, in the sand, like hundreds of them. I'm like, man, what is that? And then I came back a little bit later, and I don't know if the sun had gone down or what, and there's hundreds of these crabs, one with one big pincher,
Whoa.
hundreds of them. And they're just kind of hanging out, and you kind of get close to them, and they go into their hole and hide from you. And it was just like, at first, it was kind of creepy. You're just like, oh my god, there's like hundreds of these things.
Bro, I would have got hungry.
I thought about it. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, the food there was expensive,
Right.
but that's where I discovered painkillers. The drink.
Yeah, I just
Oh
made one
man.
yesterday or two yesterday for somebody.
Oh my god, those are such like so
It's
dangerous.
so
Such a
good.
beach drink for me.
Yeah, it is.
Um, but man, I had something interesting happen to me there that made traveling really, really hard. I was sitting at the bar, the hotel bar or whatever, open air, and I'm charging my phone, and I'm going, man, my cord's getting really hot, and I ended up melting like the inside of the charging port.
Oh, on the phone
So
itself?
on the phone itself, and so I'm like, crap, man, I can't charge my phone. So I like first thing I do is I'm calling my parents like, hey, this is what's going on. So if you lose contact from me, like I'm okay.
Right, right.
And I start trying to do different research of like where I can go and what I can do. Um, and I ended up like a couple days later, I just went without a phone for a couple days and just hung out at Cinnamon Bay. I was like, well, my parents know where I am. I'm
Yeah.
good. I don't need to go anywhere. After that, I ended up hitchhiking. I hiked up, and this is when I hiked halfway over St. John. So I hiked basically up to the top of St. John to the main road that goes across the top and hitchhiked my way to, oh man, what was the name of that base? What's at the end of St. John? Do you know?
I'm actually
Coral Bay or something.
sounds I've
I
heard
think
of
it's
it.
Coral Bay. And I hitchhiked over there because I figured out that there is an internet cafe.
Oh,
I
nice.
mean,
Yeah.
so I was like, all right, I got to go do some stuff. I got to figure some stuff out. Um, and so I hitchhiked over there, got to an internet cafe, and just paid for my hour or two of internet, and um, ended up trying to get over, figure out the. Oh my! I'm trying to think of the ferry schedule. So I
Gotcha,
ended up
gotcha.
figured out the ferry schedule, and I was like, okay, so what I got to do is I got to go from St. John back to St. Thomas in the first boat. Okay. So that then I can get a taxi to go to the Sprint store, see if I can get my phone fixed or get a new one or whatever I got to do. And I got to do this like the next day.
That was in
And
Charlotte, right? Like most things are in Charlotte.
I don't remember exactly where it was. It was a pretty short ride from Red Hook.
Oh, I know. Actually, there's another area. You go north, up and over, and there's actually some stuff up
That
there.
that sounds right.
Yeah.
So, next day after snorkeling and sleeping in my hammock on the beach, I did get to sleep through a tropical depression in my
That's
hammock.
fun.
And
Not a
that was an
hammock.
interesting experience. I figured out how good my tarp is. It held up pretty well. I got the little bit of
Oh,
spray
cool.
through it. I got bit by like. There's one day I didn't put anything underneath me in the hammock, and I woke up
Ooh.
the next day and I had probably 150 mosquito bites on my back.
Dude, so when I spent 3 months down there, at one point we did this little job for 10 or 12 days, and it was in the mangroves by Red Hook. And you'd go to like the local marina bar, and they had bug spray on the bar. Like that's how bad of an area you were trying to sleep outside in.
Oh yeah. After that, I ended up sleeping on the ground and I had a bug net over me, but not under me.
You would have wrapped up like a cocoon, man.
Yeah, they just bit me through the hammock,
That
and this
too.
is
They're
right at the peak of Zika virus going around. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I remember this distinctly. Like after looking at my back, all covered in red, I was like, "Well, I have Zika now." Like it was just
ah.
never happened. I was lucky. So next morning, I get up at like 5 or 6 in the morning. I'm out there hitchhiking. And I was out there for like an hour. It's early. And I'm just trying to get to this like 7:30 boat or whatever time it was, and end up getting a ride with some American who had a Jeep out there and gave me a ride in. I was like, yeah, man, I pick up every hitchhiker I see. They're just trying to get somewhere, and I'm probably going there too. Um, Hop the boat, get on the taxi, and I'm in the Sprint store, and I'm like, they're looking at it, and I'm like, well, what can I do? Takes me about an hour and a half. They were like, got it in back. Well, we can't fix the port. They ended up, it was one of the first phones that had the wireless charging ability.
Okay, so I was going to ask you if it had that.
I had no idea it had it, and she just comes
Your
out and goes,
your phone was like, yeah, I do.
yeah.
Just heard it go off.
And so they hooked me up with a wireless charger, and I was like, cool. Like I don't have to go home. I got to keep traveling. This is great.
Yeah.
Everything's coming together, man. I went and got some food and went right back to Red Hook, and hopped the boat over to Tortola, in Roadtown. Um, and this was such a hard experience because again, I'm going from camping. Like I'm camping in the Caribbean in the summer. It's hot and all this,
Yeah.
and so I hitchhike out of the after going through customs. I'm in the British Virgin Islands. You don't know that Tortola is that, so I'm technically in Britain in the Caribbean.
Right.
Um, and these two amazing ladies pick me up, and we're just talking and carrying on and having a great conversation. And I'm like, man, I'm trying to find somewhere cheap to stay, like a campground, like anywhere. And so they start calling their friends. And I'm looking online, and they're like just driving around with me and like ran an errand. I'm like, I got nothing to do. I got nowhere to
Yeah.
go.
Dude, people there are
Um,
so friendly.
oh, dude, they were so nice. And one of them called a friend who was working in a hotel, and like, I found a room for under $100. No, that's
Wow.
pretty cheap there, but there was
That's
no air conditioning.
no, I know. And yeah, that sucks about that down there. Like, okay, so you and I both have learned this probably, but for the listeners, that the reason that most people don't use air conditioning is electricity is super expensive down there. Super expensive. And most people don't even run their hot water heater. They just have like a lot of setups, like the marina I stayed at, they had a setup where they have black barrels on top of the roof of the marina showers,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets sun heated. So if you want a hot shower, you take an evening shower. In the morning,
Yep.
by morning, it's a little chilly.
Yeah. Solar
And
showers
also,
work pretty well.
yeah, and also the water there is expensive. I know that whenever I had to do a load of laundry at that marina, dude, I swear it's so weird. Whenever I have my headphones on, I feel it's so muffled. I'm not used to that. I'll get better. I'm a rookie. But no, yeah, like the laundry, because of the cost of electricity and water, was like $20 if you wanted to wash and dry it.
Yeah.
I ended up buying a 5 gallon bucket from Home Depot, and and like laundry detergent, and just hand washing my clothes in a bucket, and I would hang them on the boat I was restoring to dry. I'm like, I can't. I was like, that's $20, and like you said, summer, it's hot, so you're sweating the whole time. Like
Yeah.
we didn't have air conditioning in our cabin either. We had one little fan that big. So yeah, I feel your pain on the no air conditioner. You're thinking hotel, I get to cool down, and then no.
No. The first night though, a storm rolled in, and it was like chilly. It was great. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh man, this is great." I slept so amazing.
Yeah,
Next day,
little
I got up.
breeze.
Yeah, it was just like windows open, fan
Yeah,
going. It was like the epitome of not a care in the world.
yeah.
I'd gone out walking around, went and I think it was like $2 to get into this local soccer game. I went and watched like the last
Wow.
half of it. And as you know, I'm coming off the PCT, so I'm used to like hiking 20-mile days and stuff. So I just
Right.
walked around town and kind of getting those looks of like this isn't where tourists go, and I was never like in danger or anything. It was just kind of the weird
No.
looks of like, what are you doing here? So I was like, hey, how's it going? Walking around. And I was in Road Town, and next day I got up, Virgin Gorda, the baths, that national park.
Vaguely, yeah, yeah. I never made it
Um,
down. I never made it down there when I was there, to be honest. But
yeah, so I hopped a ferry to Virgin Gorda and hitchhiked, or no, I think I walked like 3 miles because I didn't want to pay for a taxi, you know. And it's this really cool hike where you hike out, and there's a bunch of like massive boulders that you like kind of climb between, and there's a trail, and you're down into the water, and then you kind of swim through this like kind of cave, and then kind of come back up and hike around. Dude, it was such a cool
hey,
like area.
didn't you have your what is it, 60-liter pack on you?
That was at the hotel. So I had the hotel for 2 nights,
Oh,
and then
okay,
this was just a
okay.
day trip. And I
Got you,
was like,
got you.
that's what I'm going to do. I didn't go up to Van Yeet, I think it is the party island. I was like, dude, it's just too expensive, man. I had to
Yeah,
limit it. Like the islands are expensive. At this point, like I'm like been here for a month, haven't worked in probably 6 weeks to 2 months.
right. Well,
You
and
know,
tourist, if it's a party place, it's a tourist place, and tourist places are expensive. Remember whenever we went down to Miami so you could fly out for your South America trip that we're going to talk about next time. But remember, I ordered a Red Bull and vodka, and it was like $15 or $18 at the hotel. I'm like, whoa. It was crazy.
all right,
So
off
yeah,
topic.
it's
Most
tourist.
expensive bar I've ever been in was in Dubai. Me and Tori ordered two Coronas
Ooh.
and two Jamesons. Try and guess how much that was.
I'm okay. So I have a similar story. Tiff and I just went down for Christmas to visit family, and we stayed one night in Hollywood. And at a convenient bar on the boardwalk, I'm like, we need two Coronas and one white tea and a green tea. And God, I wish I could ask her, call her. No, but no, I think it was about $70 plus tip. But you're in
Mine came up to about
Dubai.
75.
Okay, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and it was a rooftop bar on a 4-star hotel, and it was 75 bucks. And I mean, I kind of complained to the bartender. I was like, "Hey, I know it's not your
did
fault,
you?
man. Whatever." He ended up giving us 2 free shots of tequila.
Did he
And, I
really?
mean, I tipped
Nice.
him well. I mean, I wasn't going to stiff him. I mean, he doesn't make the prices. He's just working, man.
I know.
So
It's
I
just his.
still tipped him. I tipped him like 20 bucks on it to make it fair, and he gave me 2 free
Yeah,
shots of tequila. And I was like, all right. So for
yeah.
80 and 95 bucks, I got 6 drinks. All
To be
right.
honest, I think that mine was that much after tip. I think it was like $50 or something. It was
Yeah.
crazy because I would assume Dubai, that's like oil money, man. That's expensive over there. So
120 bucks for a 4-star hotel for the night. I mean, I'm
over
talking
there,
like, yeah, like you can get really cheap hotels, but there's a lot of like, it's weird. You get really cheap this, and then this is really expensive, and then this is really
right?
cheap, and
They just get
but
you there, and then you're gonna spend your money.
that was my first night on my trip to Asia, so I was like, whatever. I have money now,
Damn.
and just so everybody understands, like I did this entire summer on 3 grand to tell you like how much I was like trying to make this work.
Which one? The
This summer, like this
Puerto?
summer, we're talking about 2017.
Oh,
I think
Puerto
I
Rico.
saved up
Puerto
like
Rico. Yeah.
3,500 bucks, maybe 33. I didn't have any bills. My car was paid off.
Way to bring it back. Boom.
But like, that was my budget. And at this point, I'm a month and a half, 2 months in to eating
Right.
into my savings. So like anything I do is like really hurting me.
Yeah,
And it was after that night, and those couple of days, I was like, dude, it's just too expensive down here.
it is. It is.
So I had to kind of start thinking my way back. And I think it was a couple of days before that I ended up buying a flight from, St. Thomas, back to Louisville, I think it was.
Sure, it wasn't Charlotte.
No, no, I was going from Charlotte's in there, but I was going back to Nashville. Okay. And to go hang out with my parents and go, okay, I'm broke. Go back to my mom and dad. Let's see mom's food, hang out. But after, Virgin Gorda, that next night I get back and I'm like, it's a hot, humid night. And I'm like dying. I don't sleep well in the heat. Like if I'm in a hammock, I got a breeze, I'm good. But I mean, I went down and hung out in the pool. I like tried to hang my hammock up in my hotel room. I was miserable. Absolutely miserable. So I got like horrible sleep and get up the next day and I got to go hitchhike to the port, get on a boat, get to Red Hook, and get on a taxi, get to the airport. And so I had plenty of time for it, made it no problem. Show up like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon for my 5 o'clock flights, like the last flight out. And that airport, it's pretty small, right?
It's really small, yeah. It actually, a lot of people, well, not many, most people do not travel as much as we do, so they never encounter it. But like when people do travel that do it on occasion, they're used to like getting off the airplane, walking down a hallway. Like, no, in St. Thomas, they roll stairs up to the little plane and you walk down to the pavement. Like, that's it.
So
it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's tiny. Like there's a shop and like a food stand, and that's it.
Yeah. Hey, and that's did they have the shot girls still there serving rum?
Oh. I needed it for this day. Like I needed it. And so we're sitting there, and ironically, remember Moose? Moose calls me.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey man, you want to be a parking manager this year?" And I ended up like doing an interview, a pre-interview right there. And I was like, yeah, kind of talking to him about it. And he's like, yeah, well, let's set up an in-person, a second round, and we'll do it in person because I told him I'm coming back to Colorado. And for some stuff I'll tell you about in here in a minute. And I'm sitting there and I see everybody kind of getting up and walking over to the window. And I'm like, what's going on? And our plane was delayed by like an hour. I was like, okay, whatever. And for anybody who travels, it's one thing to have your plane delayed. The worst thing you can see is when they start taking the luggage back off the plane. And at this point, it's like 6-7 o'clock, and we're watching them take the luggage off, and we're like, what the fuck is going on? And no one's telling us anything. And all we could find out is there's something wrong with the plane. So I got to the airport 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? So we're sitting there, and everything shuts down at 6 or 7. There's no food. There's no, there's water fountain, and we're sitting there and it was hours on hours of just uncertainty. We don't know what's going on. I ended up going up to the security guard and I smoked cigarettes at the time. And I was like, hey man, can I go outside and smoke a cigarette? And he's like, no, you can't go out there. But, I charmed him, I guess. And he goes, come on. And he walks me back through security, hangs out with me, talks with me, and lets me smoke a cigarette, and just walks me back into security. And he's like, "Yeah, there you go, man. Thank you."
I'm gonna try that.
It's that small of an airport.
No, I know. And it's not friendly of a place.
Yeah, and so at this point, the sun's down. We've been here for probably 10 hours. No one knows what's going on. Still, we don't even know if we're leaving. And eventually they come out and it's probably 1 o'clock in the morning and they're like, we're loading the plane. And of course everybody erupts into it. And I'm like, then it clicks in my head. We're flying to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my end destination. So I got to get from Charlotte to Nashville.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, let's get there. And of course, the airline is telling us how there's going to be hotels waiting for us. There's going to be, food vouchers and taxis, and it's going to be the most amazing experience of your life.
Fucking limo and shit.
Yeah. So we land, and they hand us a $12 food voucher and tell us we're on our own. That's it. Like this did end up making in the news. Like people, like we were pissed. The entire like it was one of those where like people are filming and people are screaming. I'm just standing off there like I'm too tired to give a shit.
Right.
So I ended up calling another friend, and because I was looking at flights, and it was like a day next day, evening or something for a flight back to Louisville or to Nashville, and I ended up finding a flight the next day to Louisville. So I call up the airline. I'm like, hey, like this is what's going on. My wallet was stolen. Like I can't do this. I can't do this. Can you get me this switched over? And I just like straight lied through my teeth to get these people to get me to Louisville. And so like I end up like I get my one breakfast sandwich that I had to still pay like $3 for from the food voucher from Starbucks because it was the only thing open. I eat something and I literally just got my camping air mattress out and like went to sleep next to my gate at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. And just like it was a completely dead airport. Woke up to like people bustling around. I was like, oh, I guess I should get up.
Be
Got on the
prepared.
plane and went and hung out with my friend in Louisville who gave me a ride down to Nashville because it's only like a 2-hour drive. And she was friends with my parents. So she took it as I'm going to pick him up and go see my parents because that's where I knew her from.
That's cool.
Oh man, that was probably one of the worst flight experience I've ever had in my entire life. It was so rough after a night of not sleeping and just the promises of this airline that I think it was like American. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. So I think it ended up being like a 23-hour travel day. From start to finish, 24, maybe 26 hours. But, that's what happens when you travel, man. You just you have to like roll with the punches and just understand like things are going to go wrong. And,
Yeah, for sure.
So I get back to my parents' house. I'm broke. I'm probably down to like $1,500, $1,000, whatever it is. And I'm going, all right, what can I do?
What month was it at that point?
Oof, I don't even remember. It was into fire season. I hiked for about, it was probably August,
So you still
maybe
had like
July.
a few months before you were even making money again.
Yeah, it was probably June or August. And so, I'm sitting there talking to my parents. My brother-in-law was like, well, you could probably get a job over here, with your experience working in some outdoor store. And I'm like, no, I don't really want to work. Work sucks. So what do, man? I go back to my roots and, I go hiking. I'm like, I've got to get to the PCT. I'm going to go try and finish the PCT. So I had made a promise to call him my little cousin. He was, 9 years old at the time. But I was coming back. And so I call his mom and I'm like, hey, look, this is what's going on. Like, how much is it going to break his heart if I don't? She's like, you're going to break his heart. And I said, okay, I'm coming back to Colorado. So I fly to Colorado, and I was just going to fly into like Oregon and go that way. So I fly back to Colorado where my car is, and I hop in my car and I hang out there for like a week with the little one. And I'm talking to my friend who was doing the Colorado Trail, and she was having a miserable time. I mean, the bugs and all this stuff and fires. So I was hanging out with her a little bit, and I convinced her to come with me, get off the Colorado Trail, come road trip with me from Colorado to Bend, Oregon, and hike the PCT. Because I had met her on the PCT the year before, so she's like, she's all about it.
Yeah.
So I ended up like picking her up. We had this amazing road trip through like Utah, and we're just camping and hanging out because we're both just dirt bags at this point, just hiker trash. Like we'll sleep wherever we eat, whatever, having the time of our lives.
Piss wherever. Speaking of,
Uh,
I gotta take a quick break and we'll come back to it.
all right,
Refresh your drink.
all right. I'll see you in a second.
I feel like a new man. Dude, so let me ask you this real quick. Whenever you like, okay, so the reason I was like messing with that earlier, because it's hard to even hear my own voice because I hear it muffled because of these.
Mm.
So it's weird. Like they're almost like too noise canceling. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, I know
odd.
what you mean. It is
It's
weird. You
I
can
might use
hear
it.
like the vibration, but not like the sound.
Yeah, it's weird. Matter of fact,
Maybe that's why people do that, like DJs.
oh, that's definitely why DJs do that. All
It
right.
does look. It looks funny though.
Oh man. All right. It's all right.
Get
Next time
used
I'm
to it.
next time
Deal
I'm
with it.
weird. Next time I'm gonna buy some badass earbuds that aren't noise canceling. All
There you go.
right. And we're back.
So yeah, so I mean, we road tripped out, got to Bend, Oregon. I was hanging out there with a few days with my buddy Ty, who I grew up in Kentucky with. Um, One of my longest friends, super awesome guy, and ends up Heather lived in Oregon. Her dog got sick, and she wasn't going to be able to join me on the PCT, so she had to go home and take care of her dog. Which respect to that.
Right.
So I got my buddy Ty. I was going to loan him my car for while I was on the PCT. He drove me about, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours north to get up to White Pass, Washington.
Okay.
And then I set up through a PCT page, Trail Angel, who picked me up he dropped me off in some parking lot in the middle of nowhere. And she picked me up and then drove me up to White's Pass, Washington, where I'd gotten off the year before with like hypothermia and snow and missing friends and stuff.
So
Um,
were you gonna head north or southbound?
at this point, I was going to go southbound. I was going to continue southbound,
Okay.
and because I needed to get down to Mount Shasta,
Okay.
and that way I'd like hike past Bend, and Bend was almost like the halfway point for me.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I got to do a place called the Goat Rocks, which is a knife edge. It's like one of those like really narrow trails. You're just up on the top of it looking down. Oh, it was so beautiful. But the
I
first night I was
bet.
out, the mosquitoes were so horrible, and I didn't have I had a shelter, so it was just a rain fly, so there was no like
Oh
netting,
no.
and it was hot, so I couldn't sleep in my sleeping bag. I couldn't be out of my sleeping bag. And I was miserable. I was like, oh man, did I mess up? Did I make a mistake doing this?
So
So
I'm guessing that bug spray is not like a hiker's friend because of the weight, huh?
I mean, some people do, but truthfully, like I just cover up. It's why like for people who
Yeah.
know me, I'm always in long sleeves and long pants because it
Right.
protects you from the sun and it protects you from the bugs. And
Okay.
then I don't have to carry bug spray, so I never
True.
really carry it.
Right.
Um, so I start making my way south. I end up running across a couple people that I like knew from like the PCT year before. Hiking with what was her name? Gourmet was her name. She was a chef, and she made like she would pick wild mushrooms and like make like really good meals out on trail. So
Mycologist.
yeah, she knew her stuff. Most of that was like it was just hiking. I said like, oh, I'm gonna take this easy. I'm gonna do 15-mile days.
Enjoy
Like
it.
yeah, except I get there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I can
Yeah.
get 15 miles in three by 3 o'clock, and I'm like, cool. Now what do I do?
Slow down.
And once you get your pace,
I
it's
know.
hard to slow
Dude,
down.
I walk fast too.
Yeah.
It's I
So
totally
I'll
get
get back to
it.
20-mile days, and I'm just crushing them. And I'm just blowing through it. And when you get into like Central Oregon, I guess I didn't realize the water kind of runs out, and I almost got into some situations with running out of water because I just didn't have the capacity for it. At one point, I was going to fill my cooking pot up with water and carry it and just in my hand like a cup and hike with it because I was like worried about it. And I found out there was a water cache that I could
Oh,
fill
cool.
fill up from from Trail Angels putting it out there.
So let me ask you this real quick. You don't carry tablets or a life straw, either or
No, I
both?
carry a similar to a life straw. So what
Okay.
a life straw is, they're called like a nanotube filter. And
Right.
the brand I just carry is a Sawyer because it fits onto water bottles. Lifestar, you have to drink
Oh
directly
yeah.
from something, but this I can filter into something.
Oh,
But
cool,
same
cool,
principle.
cool.
Um,
There was just no water for you to drink, or
Yeah,
even
it was
filter
just
to even
it's
filter.
just dry season. Fires are
Right.
going, smoky days, beautiful sunsets though,
Yeah.
and so most of it was kind of uneventful until I got to about Crater Lake, and I will tell you like it's hard for a lot of people to really mark one of the hardest days in their lives, and this was like one of the hardest days on trail I've ever had. And
Pre
so
pre water.
this was after the water.
Oh, okay.
So I'd gotten that water cache that day. So I knew I was good. And then I knew I was getting to Crater Lake, and I had this campground. I think it was like 22 miles from my starting point that day. So I was like, cool. This is going to line up perfect. I'm going to camp close to Crater Lake. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be awesome.
Right.
So, and I knew there was a fire close. So I was walking up and was getting ready to get my view for the first day, that day of Crater Lake. And I'm literally walking up to the first viewpoint, and I see this firefighter truck pull up, and they walk over to their information board, and I walk up, and this lady's putting up this notice that the campground I was supposed to go to just closed because of the fire.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, so like, what are the options? She's like, well, everything from here to the main village in Crater Lake is closed. I'm like, so I've already done at this point like probably about 19 miles, 20 miles, right? And the next campground was another like 14 miles.
Oh.
So I think I was at a 21-mile day, and it was 14 more miles I had to go. And I
You
just found
can't
this out, and I'm like,
you can't just like jump off trail and camp?
not in Crater Lake.
Really?
Everywhere else outside national parks, they're a lot more strict, but in Crater Lake, they actually go around with like a thermal heat gun to find people doing that.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Because it's such a fragile area. They don't want
Right.
people camping next to the rim because it's going to help degrade it and send more debris down into the lake.
That
So I
makes
knew
sense.
I could probably hitchhike, but it's also illegal to hitchhike in Crater Lake. And even the fire person was, you could get away with it. Like, no one's going to say anything. I was like, I know, but I want to do Crater Lake Trail. I want to hike around the lake. Like, this was one of the things I was looking forward to. So I'm
How
like, all
long
right.
how long is that trail?
It goes all the way around, so I was only doing half of it. I came in at the north side on like the northwest, 10 o'clock, so to speak, and then I had to just go around to about 6.
Well,
And how
as far as terms of mileage,
totally around it, I think it's like 30 or 40 miles. And I was
whoa.
doing 14 or 15 of them.
Whoa, that's a big lake.
So huge lake, absolutely beautiful. So I go, okay, I know what I got to do. And I end up talking with some guys, and they even offered me a ride to this area. And it was some Australians who'd rented an RV. They're like, man, I just can't miss this section. I got to do this section. So they're like, all right, well, you want a beer? And I'm like, yeah, I need a beer right now. So they gave me 2 beers. I drank one with them, and they gave me one for the road. And I just take off, and I don't remember what time of day it was. It was early afternoon. And I start hiking, and I'm like, oh man, this is going great. I got a couple climbs. I'm getting a little more tired. And at this point, I'm pushing a 30-mile day, and I've done like 1 or 2 of like 30s. Like, that's pushing it for me at this point.
Yeah.
And I got like 5 miles left, and I start dropping, which is normal. You cut down off the plateau or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I'm getting wore out at this point, and I'm racing time because I'm trying to get to the campground before the store closes, so I can buy food, beer, smokes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the map, and I'm reading how much elevation I have, and it just tells me like, okay, you have 5 miles left and 1,200 vertical. I'm like, oh, cool. Like that's really easy. 500 feet in a mile is about what you're trying to get. It's it's a good grade. And so I'm hiking, and I'm hiking. I'm like, and it's just flat. I'm starting to get worried, and I'm just crushing it. Like I'm driving, and I'm getting real tired. And I look down, and I'm like, man, I've only got like 1.1 miles left, and it's 1,200 vertical feet. So I keep hiking. I'm like, it gets down to like 0.7 miles and 1,200 vertical feet. And I just look up at this hill,
Oh no.
and my heart broke. And I sat down on this stump, and I cried. And I cried my eyes out. It broke my soul. And I kind of looked around after 10, 15 minutes of just crying. So I'm just like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this.
Man.
And, I'm tired. I'm like hungry. I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, I got like 45 minutes till this store closes. So I remember it distinctly. It just kind of clicks, and I look around and go, no one cares. Like, you got to do this. It's all in you.
Yep.
It's all in what you want to do. I knew I could have walked over there and gone to sleep, and no one would have said anything. I was in the middle of the woods, but I was like, all right, I'm going to do the right thing, abide by the rules, and I put on Eminem until your legs give out, and I was just like, okay,
On
this is what I got
repeat.
to do. And I put it on repeat. I did. And I just started going. And it was just like, until my legs give out. Next thing you know, I'm climbing and I'm breathing heavy and I'm rushing to the store. And like
Oh,
zero point 0.7 miles. And I did it in like 30 minutes because I wasn't crushing miles at
but
this
that's
point. I was,
steep. Okay, so for people who don't understand like that much elevation climbing that little of distance, like what do you think you were at? Like at more than 18% grade, you were like hiking up a hill.
yeah. So 500 feet in a mile is like railroad grade. If you can imagine what a railroad car would go up without like, tracks or without like gripping onto it.
I
I
wonder
don't know.
what that
It was
percentage
steep.
is.
So I'd have to do it was like zero point 0.7 miles. It was like 1,200 feet. And I walk into the store like 11 minutes before they close. And I got like hard boiled eggs, a 12 pack of beer, and like some other snacks. And it was just like, and then I had to walk a like half mile to my campsite for the walk ins. Um,
Did you at least like replenish your nutrients before you carried
I
on?
mean, I got hard boiled eggs,
Yeah,
but I stayed in
something.
the campground that was close to the campground store. So I knew I was going to get up tomorrow and go get breakfast and stuff. So I wasn't too upset. And I was hanging out and I kept like hearing about these fire closures further south. And so at this point, I had 200 miles left. I'd done 600 miles of my 800-mile hike that I needed to finish the PCT. And of that 200 miles, I'm talking to hikers and all this stuff, 50 miles of it was open. And the
Shit.
rest was due to fire closure.
Yeah.
So I hung out there for a couple days trying to figure out what I was going to do and just bummed around, went back up to Crater Lake, did a different hike, and, called my buddy who had my car. And I was like, hey, man, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm actually coming to Crater Lake in a few days with my sister. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I was like, well, can you pick me up in my car? And so just like one of those, like the stars aligned. He was coming down, meeting his
Yeah.
sister who I hadn't seen in 10, 15 years. And he came down. So I just hung out in Crater Lake for a couple days and just decided to call my hike quits because I didn't want to complete the PCT by fire jumping to get there.
Right. It wouldn't have been like the true way to do it. Plus,
Yeah.
honestly, everything works out for a reason. You know that like you probably enjoyed the shit out of those couple days of just chilling.
Oh man, it was great. I got to meet people. I played tour guide and just hung out and like would talk to hikers and tell them what's going
Yeah.
on and I was just
That's
having fun
cool,
with it.
man. Yeah,
Again, not a
you,
care in the world.
you got to
At like
relax.
yeah, and that's the thing I love about traveling like that. If you go for a 2 week vacation, you're worried about getting the most out of that 2 weeks. If you
It
go
can
for
be
2-3 month vacation, you're like, I can just chill. Like I'll go tomorrow. I'll do this, and you have this
yeah,
amazing freedom that you're not locked in. You're not worried about work. You're worried about spending money, but you find ways around that. You buy cheap beer. You throw down in
right.
hotel rooms with friends. You walk places. You know, there's all these amazing things. But at this point, I'm broke. Like a couple
Yeah.
$100 probably or whatever. And a few years back, I'd lived in California at in the national park Sequoia, and so I ended up calling them, and I was like, "Hey, y'all need any help right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, we'll take you back." I was like, "Hey, it's only going to be for a couple of weeks till I start my other job." And they're like, "Doesn't matter. You're welcome. Come on." And it had been about 2 years since I worked there, so I still knew everybody and whatnot. So I got to go hang out with my buddy at Crater Lake and show him around and be the tour guide for them, um, and head back up. Oh man, I totally skipped a huge part of the story.
Motherfucker. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Well, I know,
So
dude. I'm
the
looking at my
eclipse.
notes.
I had hitchhiked down to go see the eclipse with my buddy Tyler. Halfway through, that was a fun summer. I will tell you, I ate the most American fattening burger I've ever had, and it's right at the border of Washington and Oregon, and it's called the Hiker Burger. And what it is it's 4 beef patties, that the buns are pepperoni pizzas.
What?
Yeah, yeah,
Wait, is the pepperoni is the, like the cheese and the sauce and the pepperoni
okay,
like
make two
basically?
pepperoni pizzas,
I need to slap
put
them
four
together.
buns in the middle, lettuce, tomato, onion, flip it
Bro,
over, cut it, hiker trash burger.
I was gonna say that's like the most dope thing, full of all the carbs you need to hike like 20 miles a day.
And it was just amazing. That was a really fun stop in the gorge. I hung out with some people. I hung out with this guy named Shrek's house, and we ended up like doing a bunch of manual labor for him. He was trying to build another tent pad for camper or
Oh
for
yeah.
through hikers, and so me and this
Explain.
guy Hurlgo just
Ex-
dug out like this side of the hill with pickaxes and shovels, and he let us stay there for free. I mean, he was letting anybody stay for free, but he ended up like giving us a 12-pack of beer, going, "You guys are
Fuck
awesome!"
yeah.
Like, it was such
Hey,
a great one.
so you and I both know about this, but for the listeners, explain that whole process of the tent pads along long through hike trails like that.
So you get a lot of groups like the PCTA, which is the Pacific Crest Trail Association, and then they're really ones that do it along the PCT because the National Forest Service will put them in designated areas. The
Mm-hmm.
PCTA will put them in more strategic areas for through hikes with the National Forest approval. And so basically, we've all been in the hills, and there's nowhere you can put a tent. And so what they'll do is they'll go in and they'll cut into the side of the hill, and they'll make a flat spot for you to be able to lay. And sometimes it's clearing out brush in the desert. Sometimes it's just positioning rocks the right way so that there's good drainage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I have a lot of credit to anybody who works on trails. Anytime even still to this day, if I'm hiking and there's like a part of a trail I can clean up, if I can move that tree, I pull out my like saw and I'll cut trees that have blown across and are dead. Because it's dealing with blowdown will slow you down so
Dude,
much.
hey, so shout out to Seth, who before we even knew him and met him, that's what he did.
Yeah.
Like the summer before I worked with him, that's what he did. They used to just go out on trail for 2 weeks and camp and clear shit.
I still think about going back and doing that just because, you got to balance like what do you want to do and how much money do you want to make? Because generally, like, they don't
Yes.
always align.
No, they don't.
And I'll tell you that the experiences are better than the money.
Yeah. But you just got to
So
learn to live. You have to learn to live different. Um,
you just got to accept a rougher life. It's not
yeah.
that bad. I mean, we did it
No,
for
it's not.
thousands of years.
I know. We're all spoiled bitches now.
That's why my face never gets cold.
I just trimmed mine.
Yeah. So anyway, back to where we were at. So I head south from Bend after staying up there with my buddy and his sister and whatnot, and make a couple stops along the way. You get on the coast, drive down Highway 1, and just again, I'm just thinking about the next stop. Not thinking about much further than that. I know I got a job in Colorado.
Right.
I'd already been accepted for the manager for parking and base area operations, and I go back to work at this family summer camp. I mean, what a way to end. Like, I'm at a family summer camp. They have horseback riding, they have paintball, they've got BB, archery, all this stuff. And it's just like I never left. And it was so great to see some of those people and do some other hikes. And at this point, I'm back in shape. And so I ended up hiking Alta Peak because
So, is Sequoia and Alta Peak, is that in Northern Cali?
no, it's in Central. So if you know where
Okay.
Fresno is, it's about an hour and a half east of Fresno. So
Okay.
about if you were driving through the mountains straight from Sequoia, it'd be about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of like Tahoe. But you have to go
Okay.
down, so an hour down, 2 hours up, and then like an hour back up to get to
Yeah,
Tahoe.
yeah, yeah. I'm getting where you're at.
And the reason I wanted to do Alta Peak was because my first hike in the Sierras, when I first got out there in like 2015, 2014, my buddy's like, "Hey, you want to do a hike?" I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna do Alta." I was like, "Okay, whatever." I didn't make it.
What's the climb?
So it's really
Elevation?
not bad, but the last 2 miles are 2,000 vertical feet, and you
Whoa.
sum it out at like 11 and some change. And so I'd been down in the desert and I wasn't acclimated. I literally looked at him and said, "Hey, man, I'm stopping here. I'm done." I took a nap on the
Mm,
rock and couldn't make it, and I had done
no
it
shit.
since then, since when I lived there for a year and a half. But I
Right.
was like, hey man, I want to go do this. And so I hiked up Alta Peak, and then I bushwhacked down the backside of it and just trail path find my way down. And ended up having to like I had to drop off like a 10, 15 foot cliff and did like the drop down and hang and drop
What?
down and like
That's gnarly.
made my way down to Pear Lake, which I'd done that hike. So I'd always wanted to connect these two. And you come down to Pear Lake and you go back and you can split. You go past this watchtower where you're just on this like 700, 800 sheer foot cliff, and overlooking Topeka Falls, Tokapa Falls, and it was brutal. Like I was like bleeding out of my legs, and just like it turned it into like a 15, 17 mile day. But I had a blast. It was so
It's
amazing.
15 to
Um,
17 miles of intense terrain is a lot. That's like 30 flat.
yeah. So and hung out with some friends. I really enjoyed the summer, and then I just made my way back to Keystone. And that's
Yeah.
what I like for people who are interested in like that seasonal life, like finding those seasonal jobs. If you're willing to commit to it
Yeah.
and take a little bit of like, hey, I'm not going to go out to eat every day. I'm not going to go out to eat every week. I'm going to cook at home. I'll go out and have some beers with some friends like me and you used to.
Yeah.
But you
And
saw
then you
me, I
go
cook a
home.
lot.
Yeah, but we'd go out for a couple beers and then we'd go home and drink cheaper ones.
Yeah. And that's what allowed me to like save up that 3 or 4 grand. And obviously inflation across the world has made this a little bit harder,
Yeah.
along with tourism coming back after COVID. It makes it a lot more expensive and people realize how much they can charge tourism. So but like getting off that beaten path, instead of going to that tourist place, like find that small beach, find that local beach. It's just
Yeah.
as beautiful, and the people that you meet, you'd be surprised. Like hiking and traveling really does help reunify your like positive thinking with the world, how
And
people like treat you, and how
yeah.
like they're not all out to get you.
Well, and so I like that you brought up the water thing because like typically when people are next to water, they take their shoes off. Well, like you're regrounding with the earth. The electrons can't transfer from the earth to your feet if you have freaking rubber between them. So, like you stand there and then you get the sound of the water and you're recharging from the earth and yeah, and just being in
That's why I
nature
love
in general.
swimming.
Yeah, me
Like
too.
I didn't shower a lot in the PCT, and a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, that's gross." It's like, no, I went swimming all the time. I would just go swimming in a lake,
Yeah.
and every day or every other day, same as you take a shower. Yeah, I didn't use soap, but I got the salt, the bacteria off, and I'd get out and I'd be cold and I'd lay in the sun and I would take a nap and I'd dry off and I'd get up and hike another 10 miles. And it really like centers your thought process on what you're doing in now.
Yeah.
You can't think 120 miles ahead of you. You can think about it, but it doesn't matter. You got to get through this to get to that.
That's
And so you
like
got to worry
it's
about
like
today.
yeah, it's like thinking of your career a few years in advance. Like if you're someone who doesn't have one of these jobs where it's like I'm going to work this 20 or 25-year career, we work different jobs, seasonal jobs, and trying to think about 120 miles ahead is like trying to think about 3 years of seasonal jobs in advance. You don't have any
Well,
clue what
that
you're going to be
depends
doing.
on how fast you hike. Because I know people that do. I got a buddy who was trying to do the fastest known time on the Shelterwee Trace in Kentucky a
I
few weeks back. He
This
had to
is
do
fun.
51 miles a day. He didn't make it.
Whoa.
He did his first day. He got 51.4 miles. Second day, he
Whoa.
ran in from that hurricane that came through the Carolinas and all
Oh,
that, and there was too much blowdown. And so he's like, man, I could have done it, but the blowdown slowed me down too much on like day 2 or 3. But he still like crushed 50 miles. You
50
know,
miles a day is crazy. That's like road cycle, like moderate distance.
and if you look up some of the fastest known times, you have supported and
Whoa.
unsupported and all these like intricate things for the
Right,
PCT,
right.
but like it's not unheard of. Like when people tell me
That's
I hike
crazy.
fast, I look at them and go, "You don't even know what fast is."
There's
You have
people out
ultra
there.
marathons that
Yeah.
in
Yep.
Leadville, 100 miles in 24 hours.
Whoa.
I could
How?
never.
How do you do that? I mean, you basically running. So I've been hitting the gym again recently, and like, dude, I feel like I'm going a little crazy when I go 3.5 miles per hour at an 18% grade. I couldn't imagine what the terrain is, the grade is that they're doing in what did you say, Leadville, right there by Copper
Leadville.
Mountain? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't imagine what the terrain is like, and they're doing that much. That's nuts.
And so that, just for everybody else's clarity, that's called ultra marathon.
Right.
And where you're
Right.
doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 100-mile runs, and you do it. Some people, like, there's some that go for days like that. And
It's
so you're
like,
not obviously doing 100 miles a day, but you're doing like 60, 70 miles, and you have a 300-mile race, and you got as fast as you can complete it. And you'll see them, and I watch a lot of videos because obviously I follow this kind of stuff, and the
yeah,
algorithm points it towards me, and they're like, they'll take 15-minute naps, and
right.
they'll get up and run
Whoa.
for a couple hours, and then they'll take a
So
15-minute nap.
so you know who David Goggins is then?
I don't know that. Oh, is that the Navy SEAL guy? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
He I think I forgot which three he achieved, but he's the only person who's ever done it. I think it's Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, and something else. But he was the only one to ever achieve that. And like
So
he's an ultra marathon runner.
there's an even more brutal ultra marathon than the Leadville 100,
Uh-huh.
and it starts in Badwater, uh, in Death Valley, the lowest place in the continental United States, and
Dry
also
and hot.
dry and hot. Sometimes so hot that they can't stop running, or else their shoes start to melt.
Fuck.
So they start at negative 254 feet. They run through the desert, and then they run up to Whitney Portal. Mount Whitney is the tallest point in the continental United States, coming in at 14,504 feet.
What
So
state
they
is
run
that?
from the lowest part to the highest point.
What state is that?
That's in California. So that's
Okay.
on the
Okay.
PCT. You can take a side trek to summit out Mount Whitney. Um, and to get out of Whitney Portal, it is 99 switchbacks. So you're going 99 times, and then it just starts to traverse like the ridge, and then you kind of come back. When I did that, I think I talked about it last for the year before when we talked about it. I got up
Yeah.
there at like 5 o'clock in the morning, watched sunset. One of the
Yeah,
coolest
yeah, yeah.
sunset or
That was that
sunrise.
one.
It was sunrise. I got up there for. That was great. I mean, it was brutal. You got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go hike.
It's crazy. But it'd be
So
fun. It'd be fun. But so
yeah, I think I lived with you that year, didn't I?
yeah, I okay, so me and you became friends before we lived together, and I always ranted and raved about St. Thomas in the Caribbean. So maybe I'm hoping that I sparked that influence in you, and whenever things are going south, you're like, "Fuck yeah, that sounded cool." But I remember telling you all about it. We used to go out and hit the slopes all the time together, and then um, yeah, I think we moved in the summer after you did that one.
Yeah, I think that was when you moved in. You called me when I was in Washington or something, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll live with you." Like,
Yeah,
cool.
because
Like,
Moose, you mentioned Moose. Moose actually, like, he thought of it, you know?
we were working together. We knew each other. We were friends, and here we are. We're
Yeah,
talking what,
man.
6 years later, and we knew each other the year before, so 7 years now, 8 years. You know, Again, this is why I tell people explore the seasonal life. Like, careers are always there.
Yeah, for sure.
It's do it while you're young and do it while you can and enjoy it.
Yeah,
You
man.
never
The
know who
friend,
you're going to meet.
yeah, exactly. The friends that I've met, along the way, like, it's great, And I'm glad I got to come up and visit you. And I was crazy for thinking I could live near sea level and come up and hike Buffalo Mountain. I could barely hike to the liquor store with you. I'm so out of breath, bro. So yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't do this in person when I was there because I couldn't even think straight enough to formulate sentences, let alone do a podcast. So, but um, I got some notes. I'm not gonna act like this wasn't, something that I wanted to make sure I did right and give you your proper credit. So I just want to say that whole summer that we just spoke about, and all of your summers, they're quite the journey. And what you have accomplished each time in a handful of months is more than some people experience in their entire life. And I have and always will admire you for that. It takes a special personality to do what you do, let alone do it with a smile on your face, joy in your heart, um, even throughout the hardships, and you laugh through your stories.
Even through the worst ones.
Even through
End
the
of the
worst
day,
ones.
I didn't get hurt, and I survived, and that you learn something,
You
from
live,
all of it.
yeah, you live to travel and tell more and more stories. Like I have a feeling that one day we're gonna be doing a podcast when we're fucking 60, and you're still gonna be telling new stories.
I
Like
hope so.
every
I
year's an
hope so.
adventure for you. But I know you have so much more to talk about. You've been to Europe, South America. You did the Amazon journey while in South America.
That'll be the
Yeah,
next one.
that'll be the next one, and a preview. It's like you spent 3 days on the river on a boat just to get
On
from
the
place to place.
Amazon.
Yeah, you went
5
to eight.
months in South America.
Yeah, Machu Picchu.
20,000-foot mountain
Yeah, yeah.
that I
I can't.
carried a fifth of Jack Daniels at the top of.
All right, that's a cheers moment.
Cheers. Yeah, in closing, I just hope that anybody listens to this, understand how easy it is. I know it's scary, but I hope that hearing these stories and hearing somebody do it inspires you to just take that risk, take that flight, go somewhere and try something new and explore the possibilities of this world. They're endless, and you could travel for the rest of your life and never see every inch of it.
Huh.
So take life with a grain of salt and know that it is short and that it is meant to be lived, and we're not here to pay bills and die.
That's rockstar shit. You're so right, dude. Hey, man, I've told you before. I'll tell you again. You're an inspiration. I definitely miss our daily evenings of talking shit and drinking together. They will forever be cherished. Hopefully, you never know. Like I could travel more and spend more time in person. I'm just super grateful that we have this platform to do it again, and in a way that allows other people to see how adventurous you are and how they can do it as well, as you just mentioned.
I appreciate you taking the time with me. I always love talking traveling.
Yeah,
Anytime an
I appreciate
employee,
you.
a friend, it's where my heart is. It's where my soul is. And get out there and explore.
Yeah, man. Hey, until next time, brother. Cheers and much love.
Cheers.
Here's my fucking mouse.